Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Obsidian Anubis and I'm back with another Ninth Age battle report, take 2. Hopefully the sound this time. So me and my opponent decided to throw down a smaller point battle for just 3,000 points, kind of playing with the new rules to test out everything and see if we could learn them again. So I brought a Feral Orc army and my opponent brought a Cult of Yema army. So let's go ahead and take a look at the lists. So if we look at my Feral Orc army, I had 3 characters. I had a Feral Orc general with heavy armor with Tutek's guard. He had the war cry, he had paired weapons, which were the shady Shinken, and then he was on a war boar. And then I had a Feral Orc shaman on a boar, he was a wizard adept and had the magical heirloom and was shamanism. And then I had a second Feral Orc chief with heavy armor, essence of mithril, and he was the BSB, and he had the banner of relentless company, and he had a great weapon. For my core, I had 10 Forest Goblin Raiders with shield, light lance, throwing weapons, and a banner. And then I had a big block of 24 Feral Orc Edbashers with full command, the Green Tide banner, paired weapons, and the Mammoth Steba. And then my special, I had 2 Feral Orc Boar Chariots, 5 Nashers, and then I had a big block of 10 Feral Mounted Edbashers with paired weapons and full command. And then I finally had a Giant to round out the list. My opponent had 2 characters. One was a captain on a Manicore. I don't know exactly what magic items they had, but I know they had impact hits and had a 3-up Aegis against shooting. They were the Cult of Yema and had the crown of the Wizard King. And for this particular battle, also happened to be Shamanism, so we were both rocking Shamanism. My opponent's second character was an Oracle on an altar. She was the BSB, and she was also Cult of Yema and had paired weapons. For my opponent's core, they had 2 units of 5 Dark Riders with repeater crossbows, a group of 25 Legionnaires with full command, spears and shields, and then a unit of 12 auxiliaries with crossbows and musician. And then finally in the special, 20 Dancers of Yema and 5 Warlocks, which had some magic as well. So if we look at the list, I went ahead and plopped my entire army down first. So over here on the right side, I have my 10 Spider Riders. Next to them is my first Chariot. And then kind of in the center, I have my block of 24 Feral Orc Biggins with my BSB, and behind them are my 5 Nash Dashers. And on the other side of that big piece of impassable, I had my Feral Orc Biggin Boar Riders with both my General and my Shaman tucked in there, my second Chariot, and then my Giant over here on the far left. So for my opponent, there's 5 Dark Riders in the front left, and then behind those, the Rapid Riders are actually the Warlocks. And then to the right of that is my opponent's general on the Manicore. And then you can just see the Dancers of Yema there as well. And then over here on the right side is the big block of Legionnaires with the altar and the BSB. And then the 12 figures in the unit of the repeater auxiliary. And the 5 more Dark Raiders over here on the far right. So this is what the battlefield looked like pre-Vanguard. Since I dropped my entire army first, I got to go first. So I moved up fairly aggressively over here on the right side. I moved my goblins to flank and then throw some tomahawks at my opponent's Dark Riders. And then moved up the Chariot, the Feral Orcs, and the Boar Boys up towards the center of the battlefield. That little icon there in the center, that is the secondary objective. So this one was hold the ground. So I wanted to move up and get close to that. So that way, starting on turn 2, I'd be in that area should the battle commence. Over on the left side, I was a little bit more cautious. I kind of angled both my Chariot and my Giant so that if my opponent came around, I'd probably have a charge on one of them. For Magic Phase, I got Flux Card 2, and I think I got a Chilling Howl off, but other than that, I don't think I got much off. In shooting, my Goblins managed to throw some Tomahawks and kill 3 of my opponent's Dark Riders, who failed their panic test and fled off the board. Alright, and that brings us to the Cult of Yema turn 1. Alright, so you can see how my opponent kind of angled there in the right side of the picture. They crisscrossed with the Legionnaires and the Dancers of Yema, moving them towards the Feral Orcs and then the Legionnaires towards the Boar Boys, and then moved up fairly aggressively on the left flank, bringing up both the Warlocks and the Dark Raiders. In Magic Phase, my opponent managed to blast off 5 of my 10 Boar Boys, which depleted that unit significantly, so that hurt, but I think that was the only spell my opponent managed to get off. In shooting, my opponent killed 7 of my Spider Riders, who promptly failed their panic test, and failed every rally test afterwards and fled off the board eventually. Alright, so that brings us to Feral Orc turn 2. So I declare the Wog this turn. And then so on the far left of this picture, my Chariot charged the 5 Dark Raiders that will kind of tuck behind that building. My opponent fled, but I managed to catch them and wipe them out, which is why my Chariot's so far ahead. My Orc Boar Boys charged the Warlocks, which are fleeing in this picture, who fled as well. I attempted to redirect into the Legionnaires, but I failed my redirect test, so they just kind of stumbled forward. And then over here on the right-hand side, so my Feral Orc Biggins charged my opponent's Dancers of Yema. My opponent decided to run from that, so then I redirected into the flank of the Legionnaires. You can see I made that charge. I also charged my Chariot into my opponent's Dancers of Yema, so it redirected it into my opponent's Mana Core, but it failed that charge. In Magic Phase, I got Flux card 3, and then here's what it looks like. So you can see it looks like I got the Beast Within off and Scarification off, and then I think I also got off Bring the Pain, which is the tribute spell to reroll hits. This picture was actually after combat, although it is blurry, so I apologize. You can see over there I killed about 10 or so of my opponent, and my opponent only managed to kill 1 of me because I managed to catch him in the flank. So this was definitely in my favor, and my opponent I think was an auto break and fled. However, my opponent rolled I think 4 inches, and I rolled 3 inches, so they managed to get away for now. So that brings us to the Cult of Yema turn 2. So my opponent mainly just rallied this turn. They didn't have too much to do other than that. So you can see the Warlocks rallied, the Dancers rallied, the Legionnaires rallied. They all kind of just turned to face my Feral Orcs there in the center. In shooting phase, I believe the crossbowmen shot at the Chariot over here on the far right and put a wound or 2 on it. I think they put 2 wounds on it. And then in Magic phase, my opponent got off the Beast Within, off in the Legionnaires. So that brings us to the Feral Orc Army turn 3. So this is another turn where I had a lot of charges. You can see all the red dice marking my charges. So I charged the Chariot on the right and the Nash Dashers into the Repeater Crossbowmen, who stood and shot against the Chariot, putting 1 more wound on it, so I think it has 1 wound left. And then I charged the Boar Boys and the Feral Orc Edbashers and the Giant into the Legionnaires. And you can see everybody made it. So that was good. In Magic Phase, I got a very blurry Flux card 1, and if I remember correctly, I think I got off, my opponent dispelled Bring the Pain, so I got off the Shamanism one, so I think I had +1 strength. Not that I really needed any strength. I might have been put toughness on myself, I don't remember. In close combat versus the Repeater Crossbowmen, my opponent managed to kill 4 of my Nash Dashers, but I managed to kill 7. Broke them, and they fled, which my Nash Dasher chased but failed to catch, and my Chariot just reformed. And then in close combat over here on the altar, I think I only put like 1 or 2 wounds on the altar. I didn't do too much to it, but I did kill the rest of the Legionnaires. You can see my opponent killed 5 of my Feral Orcs, so they didn't do too well. But at this point, they had lost a number of the Legionnaires, so they didn't have a whole lot of troops left anyways. So my opponent, I think, was on another auto break and fled, and at this point, my opponent went ahead and threw in the towel. So it ended up being a Feral Orc victory, 20-0. So it was a pretty big swing in my favor. I think I got lucky and managed to get some good charges off my opponent. Unfortunately, kind of got unlucky there with that big unit in the center that got flanked. But overall, it was a fun game. Like I said, we played the new rules, so we kind of played around just to figure out what all the rules were, and it was kind of nice playing this smaller battle. We may do some more smaller battle reports because they're a little bit quicker and it's easier to kind of look up rules when you don't have so many. But yeah, I really enjoyed this list. I mean, this was just kind of a play around list. I really want to continue my Feral Orc theme. I have about 3 times as many Feral Orcs on both on foot and on boars that I need to paint up and put in the battle. So I really want to run just, a complete Feral Orc army with 3 or 4 units of Feral Orcs on foot, and then 3 or so units of Feral Orcs on boars, and then just charge at my opponent and just overwhelm them with Orcs. That sounds like a good Orc army to me. But we'll see. I have to finish painting them up, so that could take some time. But overall, it was a really fun battle, and just kind of a quick one with my opponent. Yeah, if you guys saw anything, any mistakes or anything, you can put those in the comment section below. If you guys would like to see anything on the channel, you can also put that in the comment section below. I probably won't be doing any more games, at least for the next little bit. My normal opponent is out of town for the next month, so I probably won't be doing any battle reports unless I play against myself. I may do a brush and fluff video if I decide to paint anything that is somewhat nice, but we'll see. But yeah, if you guys have any comments or any concerns, put those in the comment section below. And as always, game on!